Have you ever wondered why, for thousands of years, humans have believed that simple, everyday objects could hold immense power? We're talking about sacred objects, from amulets and talismans to relics and idols. Long before we had complex concepts of magic or religion, our ancestors were already convinced that certain items were special, charged with a force beyond the ordinary. What's the story behind this deep-seated belief? Where did it come from? Today, we read journeying back to the dawn of human consciousness to explore why we started seeing power in the things around us. It's a story about survival, psychology, and the very beginnings of how we make sense of the world. Let's travel back in time, way back to a world without cities, without writing, without even agriculture. We're in the Stone Age, where our ancestors lived in small, nomadic groups. Their world was wild, unpredictable, and often dangerous. Every day was a struggle for survival against the elements, predators, and the unknown. In this environment, anything that could offer a sense of control or predictability was invaluable. This is where the story of sacred objects begins. Archaeologists have found things that just don't fit the category of a simple tool. Think of uniquely shaped stones, animal teeth with holes drilled in them, or shells carried hundreds of miles from the coast. These weren't for cutting hides or hunting mammoths. So, what were they for? These early artifacts are our first clues. They suggest that our ancestors were already thinking symbolically. A lion's tooth wasn't just a tooth. It represented the strength and ferocity of the lion. A beautifully smooth river stone wasn't just a rock. It might have symbolized permanence, endurance, or the life-giving flow of water. These objects were chosen because they stood out. They were different, rare, or had a striking appearance. In a world of chaos, finding or creating an object that felt special was a profound act. It was a way of capturing a piece of the world's power and holding it in your hand. This wasn't about magic, as we think of it today, with spells and incantations. It was a more fundamental, intuitive connection. A huge piece of this puzzle is a concept called animism. Animism is the belief that everything in the natural world, from rocks and rivers to trees and animals, has a spirit or a life force. For early humans, the world wasn't a collection of dead, inanimate matter. It was alive. The wind wasn't just moving air. It was a powerful spirit. A mighty oak tree wasn't just wood. It was a living entity with wisdom and strength. This worldview makes perfect sense when you live in close, constant contact with nature. You see the power of a storm, the life in a sprouting seed, the intelligence in a hunting wolf. In an animistic world, it's not a huge leap to believe that this spiritual essence could be concentrated within a specific object. So if a particular tree seemed especially old and strong, a piece of its wood might be seen as containing its spirit of endurance. If a crystal was found sparkling in a dark cave, it might be believed to hold the light and mystery of the earth itself. The object became a vessel, a focal point for the invisible forces that our ancestors felt all around them. It was a physical anchor for a spiritual belief. Carrying such an object would be like carrying a piece of that river's spirit, that mountain's strength, or that animal's cunning. It provided a tangible connection to the forces that governed their lives. This wasn't about superstition. It was a coherent and logical way of understanding a living, breathing cosmos. Now, let's look at the psychology behind this. Imagine facing a dangerous hunt or a long, harsh winter. Fear and uncertainty would be your constant companions. Now, imagine holding a small, carved figure that your tribe believes offers protection, or a smooth stone passed down from a successful ancestor. That object changes your mental state. It doesn't magically stop a predator, but it gives you a crucial psychological edge: courage. It's a focus for your hopes and a balm for your fears. This is the power of symbolism. The object becomes a container for meaning, and that meaning directly impacts our emotions and actions. Neuroscientists today talk about the placebo effect, where belief itself can create real physical changes. Early sacred objects were, in a way, the original placebos. They were tools for the mind. They helped our ancestors manage anxiety, build confidence, and foster a sense of control in a world where they had very little. When a hunter carried a wolf's tooth for courage, the belief in its power could genuinely make them a bolder, more focused hunter. When a community gathered around a sacred stone to pray for rain, the shared ritual strengthened their social bonds and gave them a collective sense of hope, which was essential for group survival. These objects helped transform a feeling of powerlessness into a sense of agency. They were a way of saying, I am not just a victim of circumstance. I can interact with the powers of the universe. I can carry a piece of that power with me. This is a key point to understand. The power of these objects wasn't mechanical, like a lever or a wheel. It was a power rooted in meaning. The object itself did nothing, but what it represented, its story, its symbolism, its connection to the spirit world, did everything. It changed the person who held it. Think of a modern-day example. Does a nation's flag have inherent power? No, it's just cloth and dye. But what it represents, history, sacrifice, identity, unity, can inspire people to perform incredible acts of bravery and loyalty. The flag's power is entirely symbolic, but its effects in the real world are undeniable. Ancient sacred objects worked in the same way. They were physical representations of abstract concepts: strength, fertility, protection, wisdom, or connection to the ancestors. Furthermore, these objects became keepers of memory and identity. In societies without writing, stories and traditions had to be passed down orally. An object could serve as a powerful mnemonic device, a physical reminder of a tribe's history, a creation myth, or an important ancestral figure. A particular carved stick might be used by a shaman to recount the story of the world's beginning. Touching it would be like touching the story itself. This gave communities a sense of continuity and shared identity. We are the people of the Great Bear, a tribe might believe, while cherishing a sacred bear claw. The object solidified the belief, making the abstract story of the tribe tangible and real. It connected the present generation to all the generations that came before, creating a powerful chain of belonging. So, when we look back at our ancestors and their belief in powerful objects, we're not looking at a primitive or naive worldview. We're seeing the birth of human imagination and symbolic thought. We're seeing a deeply intelligent survival strategy that used meaning and belief to overcome fear and chaos. It was the beginning of art, of religion, and of storytelling. The idea that an object could be more than just its physical form, that it could hold power, meaning, and spirit, was a revolutionary leap in human consciousness. It allowed us to navigate not just the physical world, but our inner world of thoughts and emotions as well. Before there was magic, there was meaning. And for our earliest ancestors, finding meaning in the world around them was the most powerful tool of all. This ancient impulse is still with us today, even if we don't always recognize it. Think about a wedding ring, a lucky coin, a family heirloom, or a souvenir from a meaningful trip. Do these objects have magical powers? No, but they are sacred to us. They hold memories, emotions, and stories. They connect us to people, places, and parts of our own identity. They are vessels of meaning. We are still the same humans, using objects to make sense of our lives and to carry our stories forward. The technology has changed, but the fundamental human need to find power and meaning remains exactly the same. So the next time you see an ancient artifact in a museum, remember it's not just a rock or a bone. It's a testament to the incredible power of the human mind to shape its own reality. Ever heard of a sword that chooses its own master? It sounds like something straight out of a fantasy novel, but this idea is deeply rooted in ancient cultures all around the world. From King Arthur's Excalibur, which could only be pulled from the stone by the true king, to the legendary Japanese swords said to possess a soul or kami, the concept of a weapon with a will of its own has captivated humanity for centuries. These aren't just tools of war. They are living entities, partners in destiny, and symbols of immense power and responsibility. Today, we read diving deep into the fascinating world of sacred blades and exploring why these ancient weapons were seen as more than just steel. So, what makes a sword sacred? It often begins with its creation. Ancient swordsmiths were not just craftsmen. They were seen as mystics, channeling divine energy into their work. In Japan, a master smith would undergo purification rituals, wearing white robes like a priest and praying to the gods before even touching the hammer. The folding of steel thousands of times wasn't just a metallurgical process. It was a meditative act, infusing the blade with spirit and purpose. The finished sword, or katana, was believed to have a soul. It was given a name, an identity, and it was said to have its own personality. Some were calm and honorable, others were bloodthirsty and cursed. The famous Muramasa blades, for instance, were believed to drive their wielders into a battle frenzy, craving violence. Owning one was a dangerous gamble, a pact with a powerful, unpredictable spirit. This idea wasn't unique to Japan. In Norse mythology, the sagas are filled with swords that have names and histories. Take Tyrfing, a cursed sword forged by dwarves that would cause the death of a man every time it was drawn. Orgram, the sword of the hero Sigurd, which was so sharp it could slice through an anvil. These weapons weren't just passed down. They had to be won or earned. They tested their potential owners, and only the worthy or sometimes the fated could claim them. This choosing process often involved a trial, a quest, or a sign from the gods. It was a divine endorsement, proving the warrior's right to lead and their connection to a higher power. It's a powerful narrative. The weapon doesn't just serve the hero. It validates them. Beyond the myths, there's a profound psychological aspect to this relationship. For a warrior, their weapon was their constant companion, an extension of their own body and will. It was with them in the most intense moments of their life, from the training yard to the battlefield. This creates an incredibly deep bond. The weight, the balance, the way it feels in your hand, it becomes a part of you. You learn its quirks, its strengths, its personality. This connection blurs the line between a person and their tool. The warrior doesn't just wield the sword, they commune with it. This psychological bond is so strong that the idea of the sword having a spirit feels less like a metaphor and more like a lived reality. Think about it from the warrior's perspective. Believing your sword is a living partner, a divine gift, changes everything. It's not just a piece of metal, it's a sacred trust. This belief comes with a heavy set of rules and taboos. A sacred blade couldn't just be left lying around. It had to be cleaned, honored, and displayed with respect. In some cultures, it was forbidden for anyone other than the owner to even touch it. An outsider touching the blade was seen as a grave insult, a defilement of its spirit. Some swords were considered so powerful or so dangerous that they were only to be drawn in dire circumstances. Drawing the sword without cause or for a dishonorable purpose could bring ruin upon the owner. These rituals reinforced the idea that the weapon was more than an object, it was an entity demanding respect. This relationship between warrior and weapon also shaped identity. In many societies, a person wasn't considered a true warrior until they had their own signature weapon. For a samurai, his two swords, the katana and the wakizashi, were the soul of the samurai. They represented his honor, his status, and his very identity. Losing them was the ultimate disgrace, worse than death itself. The sword was a physical manifestation of his commitment to the warrior's code, Bushido. Similarly, for a Viking, a finely crafted sword was a symbol of wealth and prestige, a legacy to be passed down through generations. These blades told a story, carrying the history of their previous owners and the battles they have fought. To wield such a weapon was to carry the weight of that history on your shoulders. Now let's talk about the darker side of this bond: violence. These are, after all, instruments of death. And when you believe your weapon has a will of its own, it changes the moral landscape of combat. A cursed sword like Muramasa that craves blood absolves the wielder of some responsibility. It wasn't just me, the sword made me do it. This belief can be a powerful psychological tool, allowing a warrior to cope with the brutal realities of war. The blade becomes a vessel for the violence, containing the stain of bloodshed and leaving the warrior's own soul in a way pure. It's a fascinating way of compartmentalizing the trauma of killing. The sword becomes the actor, and the warrior merely the agent of its will. Even the way these weapons were retired was steeped in ritual. A sacred blade couldn't simply be thrown away or melted down. When a sword was broken or its owner died, it was often given a ceremonial burial. Some were returned to the water, a gift back to the spirits of the lake or river. Others were interred in shrines or temples, becoming objects of worship themselves. The famous Japanese practice of sword burial ensured that the blade's spirit, or kami, could rest in peace. This final act of respect shows just how deep the belief ran. The sword wasn't just a tool for life. It was a spiritual being that deserved reverence even in its death. So, why does this idea of a living weapon resonate so strongly with us even today? We see it everywhere in modern pop culture, from lightsabers in Star Wars, where the Jedi builds their own and it becomes attuned to them, to the wands in Harry Potter that choose their wizard. The answer might lie in our innate human desire for connection and purpose. The idea that we are chosen by something greater than ourselves, be it a sword, a destiny, or a cause, is incredibly appealing. It gives our actions meaning and weight. The sacred blade is a powerful symbol of this. It represents a partnership between the mortal and the divine, the physical and the spiritual. It's a story about finding your place in the world and being validated by a power that recognizes your worth. In the end, whether you believe these swords literally had souls or not, you can't deny their power. They were masterfully crafted tools, yes, but they were also powerful symbols. They represented honor, identity, destiny, and the complex relationship between humanity and the tools we create. They remind us that for our ancestors, the world was a much more enchanted place, where a piece of steel could have a soul and a sword could choose a king. The legacy of these sacred blades isn't just in the myths and legends they inspired, but in the profound human truth they reveal, that the most powerful weapons are the ones we form a bond with, the ones that become a part of our own story. Have you ever stood before an ancient stone circle and felt a shiver down your spine? A sense of deep time of countless generations who stood in that very spot? These aren't just rocks. They're libraries of memory, silent storytellers that connect us to a past far beyond written history. Today, we're embarking on a journey to explore how ancient sacred objects, from towering megaliths to small personal artifacts, function as a kind of external memory for humanity. What are standing stones really? They're more than just impressive feats of engineering. Places like Stonehenge in England or Karnak in France were cosmic calendars, ritual centers, and territorial markers. Imagine a community gathering at dawn on the winter solstice, watching as a single ray of sunlight pierces the heart of the stone arrangement. This wasn't just a spectacle. It was a reaffirmation of their place in the universe. It was proof that the cycles of nature continued, that the sun would return, and that life would endure. These rituals, performed year after year, century after century, weren't written in a book. They were etched into the landscape itself, performed by the body, and witnessed by the community. The stones held the memory of the ritual, ensuring its survival across generations. And it's not just about massive monuments. Think about the smaller artifacts, the things people could hold in their hands. A carved bone, a polished river stone, a piece of amber. These objects were often deeply tied to a specific place, to the geography of a people. A stone might come from a sacred mountain, the source of a life-giving river, or a place where a legendary ancestor performed a great deed. Holding that stone wasn't just holding a rock. It was holding a piece of your origin story. It was a tangible connection to your ancestors, to the land that sustained them, and to the myths that gave their lives meaning. This brings us to a fascinating idea: memory stored outside the mind. In our modern world, we rely on books, computers, and servers to store our collective knowledge. But for ancient cultures, the world itself was the hard drive. A particular grove of trees might hold the memory of a peace treaty. A bend in the river might be associated with a creation story. These places weren't just scenery. They were mnemonic devices, triggers for the oral histories that were the lifeblood of the culture. When you walked through your homeland, you were walking through a living library of your people's past. The landscape told you who you were, where you came from, and what your obligations were to the community and to the land itself. This concept of memory of place is incredibly powerful. When a sacred object is tied to a specific location, it creates a powerful bond between people and their environment. The object sanctifies the place, and the place gives the object its power. They are inseparable. This is why the displacement of indigenous peoples from their ancestral lands is so devastating. It's not just the loss of property, it's the severing of this deep, mnemonic connection. The stories start to fade when they are unmoored from the mountains, rivers, and stones that are meant to hold them. The library is lost. So what was the ultimate purpose of all this? Why invest so much energy in creating these sacred spaces and objects? It was about survival. A sacred space wasn't a luxury. It was a fundamental structure for living. By encoding vital information about seasons, agriculture, social laws, and cosmology into the landscape and its artifacts, ancient peoples created a resilient system for transmitting knowledge. This system didn't rely on a single person's memory. It was communal, embodied, and redundant. If a story was forgotten by one person, the stone circle would still be there, prompting the memory of the ritual. If a disaster struck, the sacred geography remained, providing a map for rebuilding and a touchstone for cultural identity. These sacred spaces were anchors in a chaotic world. They provided a sense of order, a center point around which life could revolve. They reminded people of their relationship to the cosmos, to the earth, and to each other. This created a strong social cohesion, a shared sense of purpose that was essential for group survival. When you know your place in the grand scheme of things and you see that understanding reflected in the world around you, it provides a profound sense of stability and belonging. It's a psychological survival structure as much as a physical one. Even today, we see echoes of this. We make pilgrimages to places of personal significance. The house where we grew up, the site of a historic event, a beautiful natural landmark. We keep heirlooms, a grandparents' watch, a piece of jewelry, not for their monetary value, but for the memories and stories they hold. We are still instinctively trying to connect with our past, to ground our identities in something tangible, something real. We are still searching for our own stones that speak. The great tragedy is that we've become disconnected from this way of knowing. We see a mountain as a source of minerals, a forest as lumber, a river as a channel for transport. We've forgotten how to read the landscape as a sacred text, but the stones are still there, waiting. They hold the memories of a different way of being in the world, a way that is more connected, more sustainable, and perhaps more deeply human. They challenge us to look beyond the surface, to listen to the silent stories they tell, and to remember that we too are part of a story that is written not just in our minds but in the very fabric of the earth itself. Next time you encounter an ancient place, take a moment. Feel the texture of the stone, notice the way the light falls, and just listen. You might be surprised by what you hear. It might just be the faint echo of your own ancestors, reminding you where you come from. Have you ever heard stories about ancient relics that carry a deadly curse? Think of the Hope Diamond, Tutankhamun's tomb, or the Terracotta Army. These aren't just fascinating artifacts. They're surrounded by tales of misfortune, illness, and even death for anyone who dares to disturb them. But what if these curses weren't supernatural at all? What if they were actually a brilliant, ancient form of security system? Let's dive into the world of sacred objects and explore how fear became the ultimate guardian. Throughout history, societies have held certain objects as sacred. These could be anything from religious icons and royal regalia to the burial goods of powerful rulers. These items were more than just valuable. They were symbols of divine authority, cultural identity, and the cosmic order. To protect them, communities created powerful taboos, strict rules about who could touch, see, or even approach these objects. Breaking a taboo wasn't just a social mistake. It was an act that could supposedly unleash chaos, divine wrath, or a terrible curse upon the offender and their entire community. Consider the tomb of King Tutankhamun. When Howard Carter and his team opened it in 1922, a media frenzy ignited around the curse of the pharaohs. Stories spread like wildfire that anyone connected to the excavation was doomed. Lord Carnarvon, the expedition's financier, died from an infected mosquito bite just a few months later. Soon, any death, no matter how mundane, was linked back to the pharaoh's vengeance. Was it really a curse? Probably not. Most of the people involved lived long, full lives. But the idea of a curse was powerful. It tapped into a deep-seated fear of disrespecting the dead and the divine. This fear wasn't just a random superstition. It was a highly effective protective mechanism. In a time before high-tech alarms and steel vaults, how else could you protect priceless treasures? You couldn't post a guard 24/7 for centuries. But you could create a story so terrifying that it would deter would-be thieves for generations. A story of a vengeful spirit or a deadly curse is far more intimidating than any physical barrier. It follows you. It's a psychological lock that's nearly impossible to pick. These myths did more than just protect objects. They helped maintain social order. Think about it. The rules surrounding sacred objects often reinforce the existing power structure. Only the king, the high priest, or the chosen few could handle these items without consequence. This exclusivity sent a clear message to everyone else. These people are special. They have a direct line to the divine, and their authority is not to be questioned. By controlling access to the sacred, leaders controlled the narrative of power. The myths surrounding the objects became a form of social glue, binding the community together through shared beliefs and, more importantly, shared fears. The curse wasn't just on the object. It was woven into the fabric of society. Let's look at the Koh-i-Noor diamond, for example. Legend says that the diamond brings great misfortune to any man who owns it, though female rulers are supposedly immune. Throughout its history, the diamond has passed through the hands of numerous male rulers who met violent ends or lost their kingdoms. Coincidence? Perhaps. But this story has served as a powerful political tool, justifying its ownership by female monarchs like Queen Victoria and subsequent queens of England. The legend itself shapes its destiny and reinforces a particular line of succession. It's a perfect example of how a curse can be a tool for legitimizing power. The same principle applies to countless other legends. Many indigenous cultures have stories about sacred sites or objects that cause sickness or madness if disturbed. These tales weren't just spooky stories told around a campfire. They were practical instructions for survival and respect. They taught people to leave certain areas untouched, which might have protected fragile ecosystems, preserved burial grounds, or prevented people from contracting diseases from things like mold or bacteria in ancient tombs. The fear of a curse was, in essence, a lesson in environmental and cultural preservation, passed down through generations. So, where is the line between reverence and terror? It's a blurry one. Reverence is born from respect and awe. We feel it when we stand before something ancient and profound, recognizing its historical and cultural weight. Terror, on the other hand, is born from the fear of consequence. The fascinating thing is that these ancient societies used terror to enforce reverence. They weaponized fear to ensure that sacred objects were treated with the respect they deserved. The curse was the stick, and divine favor was the carrot. In the modern world, we've largely replaced these supernatural deterrents with science and security. We understand that the curse of Tutankhamun's tomb might have been linked to dormant fungi or bacteria sealed inside for millennia. We use climate-controlled cases and laser grids to protect artifacts. But the psychological power of these ancient stories remains. We are still captivated by the idea of a cursed object, the thrill of a forbidden tomb. Why? Because these stories speak to a fundamental part of the human experience, our relationship with the unknown, our respect for the past, and our understanding of power. They remind us that for most of human history, the line between the physical and the metaphysical was not so clear. The world was alive with spirits, gods, and forces beyond our comprehension. Next time you see a priceless artifact in a museum, think about the invisible layers of protection it once had. Beyond the glass and the guards, imagine the powerful myths, the terrifying curses, and the deep-seated taboos that kept it safe for centuries. These weren't just superstitions. They were a testament to human ingenuity, a brilliant psychological security system designed to last an eternity. The stories of curses aren't just about danger. They are about protection, power, and the incredible ways our ancestors made sense of their world. They show us that sometimes the most powerful force for preservation isn't a lock, but a legend. Have you ever wondered why people stand in line for hours just to get a glimpse of a splinter of wood or a piece of cloth? We're talking about ancient sacred relics. Things like the Shroud of Turin, the Tooth of Buddha, or fragments of the True Cross. To a modern scientific mind, it might seem a bit strange, right? These are just objects after all. But what if I told you that the power of these relics isn't about magic or miracles, but about something much deeper, something that's still incredibly relevant in our lives today? The greatest secret of these sacred objects isn't what they are, but what they represent to us. It's a story about human connection, belief, and the power of narrative. And once you understand it, you'll start seeing echoes of this ancient belief everywhere in our modern world. So let's unravel this mystery together. Why do these relics still matter? The answer might change the way you look at the world. Let's start by thinking about our own lives. Do you have a favorite concert t-shirt? Maybe a signed baseball or a piece of jewelry passed down from your grandmother. Think about how you feel when you hold that object. It's more than just fabric, leather, or metal, isn't it? It's a physical link to a memory, a person, or a powerful experience. That t-shirt doesn't just keep you warm. It transports you back to that electrifying night surrounded by thousands of fans singing along to your favorite band. That signed ball isn't just a piece of sports equipment. It's a tangible connection to your hero, to a moment of incredible skill and triumph. This emotional attachment to symbolic objects is a fundamental part of being human. We infuse inanimate things with meaning, turning them into anchors for our memories and emotions. This is the exact same psychological mechanism that's at play with ancient sacred relics. People weren't just venerating a piece of wood. They were connecting with the story, the sacrifice, and the profound ideas that the object represented. It was a physical key to unlocking a spiritual or emotional experience. The object itself becomes a portal to something much bigger. Now here's where a lot of people get tripped up. The debate around relics often gets stuck on authenticity. Is the Shroud of Turin really the burial cloth of Jesus? Is this splinter of wood actually from the True Cross? Scientists and historians have debated these questions for centuries, And honestly, for most of these relics, we can't be 100% certain. But here's the secret. For the believer, authenticity is often secondary. The real power of a relic doesn't come from some mystical energy radiating from it. It comes from the story it tells. It's the narrative that matters. Think of it like this. A relic is the ultimate piece of historical storytelling. It's a physical prop in the grand drama of a faith or a culture. When a medieval pilgrim knelt before a piece of the true cross, they weren't just seeing old wood. They were participating in the central story of their faith. The object made the abstract narrative of sacrifice and redemption tangible, real, and personal. It transformed a story they'd heard 1,000 times into a direct physical experience. This is why replicas of relics could also hold immense power. As long as the replica was blessed or had touched the original, it carried the same narrative weight. The power isn't in the atoms of the object. It's in the story that we, as humans, attach to it. It's a testament to our incredible ability to find meaning and create powerful connections through storytelling. So if the power lies in the story, what does that tell us about ourselves? It reveals a deep-seated human need for connection to something larger than our own individual lives. We crave continuity. We want to feel like we are part of a grand, unfolding story. Ancient relics provided a physical link across generations, connecting people in the present to the foundational moments of their culture, their faith, and their history. Seeing a relic that was believed to have been touched by a saint or a prophet was like shaking hands across time. It made history personal. It confirmed that the stories and values they held dear were real and enduring. This need for connection hasn't gone away. We see it today in how we treat historical artifacts in museums. We see it in the reverence for memorabilia associated with cultural icons like Elvis Presley or Marilyn Monroe. Think about the crowds that gather to see the Declaration of Independence. It's just ink on parchment, but it represents the birth of a nation, the story of freedom and revolution. We don't believe it has magical powers, but we revere it because of the powerful narrative it embodies. It connects us to the past and reinforces our shared identity in the present. These modern relics serve the same fundamental human purpose. They make our shared stories tangible and help us feel connected to a history that is bigger than ourselves. This brings us back to our modern world. Where else do we see this relic-like behavior? Think about the world of fandom. A dedicated fan might travel across the country to see the actual Batmobile from the movie, or the prop lightsaber used by Luke Skywalker. They know it's a prop, but being in its presence connects them physically to a story they love. It makes the fictional world feel more real. Or consider political memorabilia. A Make America Great Again hat or a hope poster from Obama's campaign isn't just an accessory. For the owner, it's a symbol of a movement, a set of beliefs, and a connection to a charismatic leader. It's a modern-day relic that signals identity and belonging. Even in our digital age, this persists. We collect digital items in video games. We screenshot meaningful conversations. We treat the first edition copy of a book as a sacred object. We are constantly searching for physical or digital anchors for the stories that shape our lives. We are, in essence, all collectors and venerators of our own personal relics. These objects, whether ancient or modern, sacred or secular, serve as focal points for our beliefs, our identities, and our shared narratives. So, what is the greatest secret of ancient sacred objects? It's that their magic isn't in the object itself, but within us. It's a reflection of our profound human need to tell stories, to build connections across time, and to make the abstract ideas we cherish, faith, love, courage, identity, feel real and tangible. The ancient pilgrim kneeling before a relic and the modern fan lining up to see a movie prop are driven by the very same impulse. They are both seeking to physically connect with a story that gives their life meaning. These ancient relics aren't just dusty artifacts from a superstitious past. They are powerful reminders of the enduring power of narrative and the human heart's desire for connection. They show us that we are and always have been storytelling animals who build our world not just with bricks and mortar, but with meaning, memory, and belief. The next time you see someone cherishing an old object, whether it's a family heirloom, a sports jersey, or a historical artifact, remember the lesson of the ancient relics. The real treasure isn't the object. It's the story it holds. Thanks so much for watching. If this sparked some new ideas for you, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more explorations into the fascinating corners of human history and psychology.